I would be upset with myself if I didn't let you in on why this is a special one for me. I've worked at the MLK Center for 12 plus years. I've kind of lost count, to be honest with you. I've had a lot of opportunity to touch a lot of lives, youths coming in, that's kind of unseen, but I see it. Our staff sees it. The young man coming up, I've known since he was probably about 8 years old. He was involved in a lot of our programs, and one of the things that it's tough for me in my job is that they're always going to go. And then the good example is that they come back. So that means a lot. This morning, I have the pleasure of introducing our guest speaker, Jordi Zapata. Jordi and his family first moved to Dunedin in 2004 at the early age of 6 years old. Along with his siblings, John, Paul, and Jesse, he attended Athenian Academy by day and completed his studies in the lobby of the MLK Rec Center by night. In 2007, following the construction of the Sterling Skate Park, Jordi spent each weeknight and weekend learning to skateboard and created lifelong friendships that he cherishes to this day. After years of this weekly routine, he quickly considered the rec center to be his home away from home, while its staff became his second family. Along the way, Jordi became active in the City of Dunedin's Youth Advisory Committee, the Recreation Department's Teen Leadership Program, and eventually was hired on as a summer camp counselor and skate park instructor. As a proud graduate of Dunedin High School, he later earned his Associate's degree of Arts from St. Petersburg College and graduated cum laude with a Bachelor of Science degree from the University of South Florida, majoring in Environmental Science and Policy with a minor in Geographic Information Systems. After completing an 18-month undergraduate internship in environmental compliance, Jordi went on to serve 6 months with the Florida Conservation Corps at Tierra Sierra Preserve State Park, where he worked to eliminate invasive plant species, restore natural habitats, and apply prescribed fires throughout Manatee County. Jordi currently works as an environmental scientist at Southwest Florida Water Management District, is a member of the Tampa Bay Association of Environmental Professionals, and is currently pursuing a graduate certificate in Natural Resource Policy and Administration at the University of Florida. A lifelong public servant, Jordi continues to find joy in volunteering as an engaged member of several nonprofit organizations throughout the state. Nevertheless, Dunedin will always be his home. Please give me a hand in welcoming Jordi Zapata.
Wow. All right. Well, thank you so much, Emily, for the generous introduction. And thanks to everybody who braved the cold this morning to come out and join us and celebrate this amazing day. Let's give another round of applause to our amazing finalists. One second before I begin. I've always wanted to do this, and so, like Emily said, this is a really big moment, and it's worth remembering for me. During an anti-slavery convention in Nantucket, Massachusetts, on August 11th, 1841, Frederick Douglass sat amongst a crowd feeling motivated, yet contrite. Surrounded by scholars, visionaries, notable abolitionists, there he was, a newly escaped slave, penniless, but married to his lifelong partner, Anna. Mr. Douglass was the quintessential individual to elevate the movement unfolding before him. I took right hold of the cause, he said, but I could do so little. What I could do, I did with a joyful heart. I never felt happier than when in an anti-slavery meeting. I seldom had much to say at the meetings because what I wanted to say was said so much better by others. Douglass faced many challenges leading up to that day. Physical, mental, emotional challenges. As a passionate debate ensued before him, he looked out across the room. He looked at the different faces in that meeting, many of those faces very different from his, and he felt small. Frederick Douglass, the critically acclaimed, world-renowned, and revolutionary orator as we know him today, at that moment, he felt small. The truth was, he says, I felt myself a slave. And the idea of speaking to white people weighed me down. Nevertheless, I felt strongly moved to speak. It was a severe cross, and I took it up reluctantly, but I spoke only a few words when I felt a degree of freedom and desired what I wanted to say with considerable ease. From that day until now, I've engaged in pleading the cause of my brethren. 1968, 127 years after the Nantucket Convention, Dr. Martin Luther King arrives in Memphis, Tennessee to proclaim his final speech. I've been to the mountaintop. When transitioning from one thought to the next, he casually utters, oh, but I know somehow that when it is dark enough, you can see the stars. His delivery, so swift, mind sharp, masterful was his tone. King had the same fire inside him that burned bright in Mr. Douglass on that same day in Nantucket. Even after Reconstruction and Jim Crow, after the wars and internment camps, the struggle still continued. And on the shoulders of icons like Frederick Douglass and countless before him, I believe that Dr. King reached the mountaintop that day. In fact, he moved them. With such grace, he delivered cuts and blows so deep, Dr. King reduced the pillars of oppression to a rubble, and the crowd was there with him. Transported by his words, King illustrated the perilous conditions of sanitation workers in Memphis that day, and of the nonviolent protesters, the hungry, the poor, the stars in our society who felt that their light had been dimmed. And Dr. King was their North Star. Dark times indeed. And in our communities, there's still many alive to tell the tale today. As the ears of the world heard Douglass's cry for voting rights, including that of women's suffrage, the eyes of the nation were upon King this time. The country watched him in Memphis with bated breath and clenched fists, hanging on to every single syllable he uttered. And on April 4th, the following day, they watched again. With bated breath again and clenched fists again, yet the eyes of the nation wept with sorrow, this time as the news of King's assassination rang out across the land. One of the brightest stars in our sky, and they too tried to make it seem like Dr. King was small. Unsuccessfully, I might add. They tried to extinguish the light of the civil rights movement. However, they must have understood that the most fascinating things about stars is that they continue to shine bright well after they're gone. Only light years become their legacy now. And in a small town of Dunedin, Florida, at a recreation center bearing his name, I began a humble legacy of my own. First and foremost, may the credit of my origin story go to my wonderful mother. Who had the brilliant foresight in picking a home just walking distance from my future high school, sandy beaches, our own little downtown, and of course, the Martin Luther King Jr. Rec Center, right here in my own neighborhood. Like I said, I was about 6 years old then, and when we moved in after attending the rec center practically every day, it had quickly become my home away from home. Better yet, Jocelyn, Emily, Matt, Mark, Sean, all the amazing Parks and Rec staff I met along the way had become my own extended family. At last year's MLK event, as Jocelyn and I exchanged laughs and caught up on lost time, she proposed that I be this year's guest speaker. Flattering as it was, I learned as a young man not to turn down offers like this when it came from Jocelyn, especially when she's giving the look. So, trying not to let my excitement get the better of me, I told her that if the offer still stood in a year's time, I would be delighted to speak. In subsequent conversations with Emily, leading up to this moment, we kept mentioning the fact that the little boy who would pick up trash around the building in exchange for free admission into the skate park, the same kid who got caught selling bags of chips and popcorn during summer camp for profit, the very same teenager who eventually asked staff members for letters of recommendation to scholarships and universities, somehow that same young man would grow up to be the individual standing before you giving this speech. What a beautiful, full circle moment that is. Nevertheless, weeks passed where I stared at a blank page without the courage or vocabulary to accurately express how incredible this moment would be. After hours of rewatching inaugural addresses, motivational speakers, and commencement speeches, I finally understood how Douglas felt at a loss for words and how so many things had been said better by others. I'm sure most of us have heard the phrase, think global, act local, right? Well, I had role models showing me what that phrase meant every day. They worked here. They worked for the city, at the library, at the community center. Many of them taught me by example as I worked beside them. I even used to roll out the mats and set the tables right here in the same rec center for this very same event just a few years ago. Whether I was participating in local events, volunteering as a camp counselor, serving on the youth advisory committee, or eventually working full-time for the City of Dunedin, I would not be the person I am today without public servants enacting positive change in communities like mine. Those who know me probably recall that I would spend most of my days either skateboarding or studying or volunteering on weekends growing up. That routine was second nature for me. After growing up here, I went years without realizing its value. Had it not been for the guidance and mentorship of people like Miss Allison, my guidance counselor at Dunedin High School, I doubt I would have truly understood the meaning of that phrase. Not many people know this, but Ms. Allison is one of the many reasons I ever attended college in the first place. Like many of my peers, the only plans I had for myself after graduation involved moving to California and pursuing the dream of becoming a professional skateboarder. I enjoyed school a little bit more than most of my friends, but earning a degree was not the most popular or affordable option at the time. Not to mention trying to pursue school and a career in skateboarding, that was largely unheard of. Miss Allison disagreed. She saw potential in me that I simply did not recognize and was convinced that I could achieve both dreams and so much more with my future. In her office one morning, she made me a deal. She would handle the research, and if I applied to every scholarship she sent me, I would agree to go to college if I got in. Eventually, I received an acceptance letter from the University of Florida, my dream school, and Miss Allison went out of her way to drive me up to Gainesville herself so I could tour that college. I doubted the possibilities, and she showed me the stars. This morning I was nervous to stand behind this lectern in a place that means so much to me, and suddenly feel small, as Frederick Douglass did. But my family, my fiance, this recreation staff, and all the mentors and advisors along the way have given me the confidence to shine brighter than I could have ever imagined. So allow me to leave you with this. Think big. Trust and invest in yourself. Strive to be the person worthy of those compliments that you receive from your peers. Through careful words and peaceful action, Dr. King helped to spark a revolution, touching countless of lives along the way, including mine. Even his early passing helped reignite a global movement, and his wisdom and legacy continue to shine. Thank you.